Warhammer 40k, VekTa Chapters, The Tale of VekTa Prime. The twin moons of VekTa Prime hung like mismatched ornaments in a bruised purple sky. One was a shattered husk, a cluster of orbiting rubble that cast jagged shadows across the land. The other glowed with a malevolent neon green luminescence, a beacon of the Necron presence that had swallowed the eastern half of the planet. Below, the megatropolis of VekTa Prime sprawled in a chaotic blend of imperial Gothic grandeur and vibrant ancient Mexican heritage. Massive obsidian pyramids served as hive spires, their slopes adorned with holographic banners of the Aquila and colorful murals depicting the planet's ancestral warriors. But the colors were fading, choked by the dust of a century of war. In the western sector, the last bastion of humanity clung to the ruins. The air tasted of ozone and burnt cinnamon, a lingering scent from the city's ancient spice markets now repurposed as munitions depots. General Liam Kaler stood upon the ramparts of the obsidian bastion, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the earth turned from rich red soil to a sterile, metallic silver. He was a man carved from granite, his face a map of scars and wisdom, wearing a dress uniform that had seen more campaigns than most men had seen winters. He clutched a gold-plated data slate, his eyes narrowing as the green moon pulsed. "They are moving, Nivturus," Liam said, his voice a low rumble that commanded attention without needing to shout. Beside him stood Commissar Nivturus Kaler. He was the bridge between the general's strategic patience and the raw power of the front lines. Clad in the midnight black armor of the VekTa Marines, super soldiers whose plate was etched with gold filigree and traditional Aztec patterns, Nivturus looked like a living statue of war. He held a power sword that crackled with blue energy, the blade humming a song of impending conflict. "The scanners show a massive surge in Gauss energy," Nivturus replied, his tone disciplined but tinged with a protective edge. "Mardosa isn't just raiding this time. He's coming for the heart of the city." "He wants the Spire of Sol," Liam remarked, glancing up at the highest pyramid, where the planetary governor's palace resided. "If the Necrons take the Spire, they can broadcast a signal to awaken every dormant tomb world in this sector. We cannot let that happen." Nivturus turned to the courtyard below, where the Astra Militarium soldiers, the brave men and women of the Imperial Guard, were digging in. Among them, leading a squad of heavy weapon teams, was Sergeant Jasmina Kaler. She was a whirlwind of energy, her armor scuffed and stained with the red dust of the planet. She shouted orders with a sharp, melodic precision, her voice cutting through the din of preparing artillery. Near her, Lieutenant Camtavius Kaler was checking the seals on his plasma gun. He was younger, his face still holding a trace of boyish eagerness, though his eyes were hardened by the reality of the Necron threat. He looked up and caught his uncle's gaze from the ramparts, offering a quick, confident salute. "Look at them," Liam whispered, a flicker of pride crossing his weathered features. 3 generations of Kalers standing against the tide. It is a heavy burden we place on the children. "They are not children anymore, Father," Nivturus said, his voice softening. "They are soldiers of the Imperium, and they are ready." Across the dividing line, in the silver wastes of the east, Overlord Mardosa watched the western city through a holographic projection. Mardosa was a creature of living metal, his body a spindly, elegant construction of necrodermis that shifted like liquid mercury. He wore a cape of woven energy that shimmered with a sickly green light, and his eyes were 2 piercing emerald sparks in a featureless metallic skull. "Such fragile things," Mardosa hissed, the sound like metal grinding against glass. They build their monuments of stone and flesh, thinking they can defy the inevitable sleep. The Kaelors believe their bloodline grants them strength. I shall show them that blood is merely a liquid that leaks when the metal cuts. With a wave of his long, articulated fingers, Mardosa gave the command. The ground began to shake. From beneath the silver sands, thousands of Necron warriors rose in eerie unison, their metallic feet clicking against the earth. Beside them, towering monoliths floated into the air, their surfaces humming with destructive energy. The attack began not with a shout, but with a flash. A beam of green light descended from the sky, striking the outer walls of the obsidian bastion. The explosion rocked the city, sending a plume of fire and debris into the air. "Incoming!" Jasmina screamed, diving behind a barricade of sandbags and reinforced plasteel. "Get those lasers humming. Fire at will." The Astra Militarium responded with a wall of fire. Thousands of las guns discharged simultaneously, creating a grid of red beams that crisscrossed the battlefield. The Necron warriors marched forward, their shields flickering as they absorbed the hits, their own Gauss flares spitting emerald bolts that stripped the armor and flesh from anything they touched. Camtavius felt the heat of a near-miss sear the air beside his helmet. He gritted his teeth, bracing his plasma gun against a ruined wall. "Hold the line!" Camtavius roared, his voice cracking slightly but remaining firm. "Don't let them breach the first gate, for the Emperor and for VekTa Prime." He pulled the trigger, and a sphere of searing blue plasma tore through a rank of Necron warriors, vaporizing them into metallic mist. But for every 10 that fell, 20 more seemed to emerge from the ground. From the ramparts, Nivturus saw the breach. A squad of Necron immortals had found a weakness in the southern wall, their heavy weapons carving a path through the Imperial defenders. "Father, the south wall is buckling," Nivturus shouted. General Liam didn't panic. He tapped his comms link. "Jasmina, pivot your squad to the south flank. Camtavius, provide covering fire. Nivturus, lead the Marines in a countercharge. Now!" Nivturus didn't need to be told twice. He leaped from the rampart, his jump pack igniting with a roar of flame. He descended like a falling star, his power sword screaming through the air. He slammed into the center of the Necron breach, the impact creating a shockwave that sent robotic soldiers flying in all directions. "VekTa Marines, advance!" Nivturus bellowed, his voice amplified by his helmet's Vox grill. Behind him, a company of armored super soldiers landed in a coordinated strike. They were a blur of gold and black, their chainswords roaring as they tore into the Necron ranks. The battle became a chaotic symphony of clashing metal and explosive energy. Jasmina arrived at the south wall just as the Immortals were about to break through. She didn't just lead, she fought. She swung a heavy power maul, smashing the head of a Necron warrior into 1,000 shards of silver. "Not on my watch, you oversized toaster," she yelled, laughing despite the danger. She glanced at Camtavius, who was still raining plasma fire from the ridge. "Keep it coming, little brother. Give them some heat." Camtavius grinned, though sweat poured down his face. "I'm trying, Jazz, but there's too many of them." "Then make every shot count," she replied, kicking a Necron soldier back into the line of fire. As the battle raged, the green moon above seemed to grow brighter, pulsing in time with the Necrons' advance. Overlord Mardosa decided it was time to end the stalemate. He stepped forward, floating inches above the ground, his energy cape billowing. He carried a staff of ancient design, topped with a pulsing emerald orb. "Enough of this tedious dance," Mardosa proclaimed, his voice echoing across the battlefield through a psychic projection. Kalors, your lineage ends today. Your city shall become a tomb, and your name shall be erased from the annals of time. Mardosa raised his staff, and a massive wave of green energy erupted, sweeping across the battlefield. It knocked back the Imperial Guard and sent several VekTa Marines flying. The force of the blast cracked the very foundation of the Obsidian Bastion. General Liam, watching from above, realized the danger. If Mardosa reached the spire, the city was lost. He grabbed his command saber, a relic of his own youth, and looked at his son. Nivturis, we cannot fight them in the streets forever. We must take the fight to the Overlord. Nivturis, struggling to his feet after the blast, looked at his father. The Marines can carve a path, but we need the guard to hold the perimeter, or we'll be surrounded. I'll handle the perimeter, Liam said, his eyes flashing with a renewed fire. I will lead the remaining regiments in a final stand at the gates. You, Camtavius, and Jasmina, you three are the spearhead. Go. Destroy Mardosa. The family gathered for a brief, breathless moment amidst the smoke. The sound of explosions echoed around them, but for a few seconds there was a strange, quiet intimacy. Be careful, Uncle Niv, Camtavius said, his voice shaking slightly. Nivturis placed a heavy, armored hand on his nephew's shoulder. Fear is a tool, Camtavius. Use it to stay sharp. But remember who you are. You are a Kalor. Jasmina bumped her shoulder against his. And if you get scared, just remember I'm the one who's actually in charge of the heavy lifting. Camtavius laughed, a short, sharp sound. In your dreams, Jazz. Go, Liam commanded, his voice booming. For the honor of our house and the survival of VekTa Prime. The strike team moved with purpose. Nivturis led the way, his power sword cutting a swath through the Necron ranks. Camtavius provided the long-range devastation, his plasma gun turning the silver plains into lakes of molten metal. Jasmina was the anchor, her power maul crushing any Necron that dared to flank them. They fought their way toward the center of the city, moving through the ruined markets and past the shattered pyramids. The citizens of VekTa Prime, those who had survived, cheered from the balconies of their homes, throwing colorful petals and shouting prayers to the Emperor. The sight of the Kalors fighting side by side gave the people hope. Finally, they reached the plaza of the Spire of Soul. Overlord Mardosa waited for them, his expression one of cold boredom. The remnants of a dying house, Mardosa sneered. You come to me with a child and a girl, thinking that bravery replaces power. We don't need power, Nivturis countered, stepping forward, his sword humming. We have something you've forgotten in your millions of years of sleep. And what is that? Little organic? Family, Nivturis replied. The attack was instantaneous. Mardosa lashed out with his staff, sending a bolt of green lightning toward Nivturis. The Commissar blocked it with his blade, the impact sending sparks flying, but the force pushed him back. Now, Nivturis yelled. Camtavius fired a maximum output plasma bolt. Mardosa shifted his position, the bolt grazing his shoulder and melting a hole through his necrodermis, but he remained unfazed. As the Overlord turned to eliminate the lieutenant, Jasmina leaped from a ruined pillar, bringing her power maul down with all her strength on Mardosa's head. The blow didn't destroy him, but it staggered him, the shockwave rattling his metallic frame. You insolent pest, Mardosa roared, swinging his arm to swat Jasmina away. But that opening was all Nivturis needed. He lunged forward, his jump pack giving him a sudden burst of speed. He drove the power sword deep into the Overlord's chest, piercing the glowing green core that powered his existence. A scream of static and metal ripped from Mardosa's throat. The emerald light in his eyes flickered and dimmed. The energy cape vanished, leaving him as nothing more than a rusted, broken machine. Impossible, Mardosa whispered, the voice now a mere rattle. How could mere mortals? We aren't just mortals, VekTa said, twisting the blade. We are the defenders of VekTa Prime. With a final surge of energy, the core exploded. A wave of white light erupted from the Overlord, rippling outward across the city. Wherever the light touched, the Necron warriors froze. Their connection to the Overlord was severed. One by one, they collapsed, returning to the dormant state of their tombs. Silence fell over the megatropolis. The green moon above suddenly dimmed, its malevolent glow replaced by the soft, natural light of the broken moon's reflection. The three Kalors stood in the plaza, breathing hard, covered in soot and silver dust. They looked at each other, and for the first time in years, they smiled. I think, Camtavius panted, leaning on his plasma gun, that I'm done with Necrons for a while. Don't get too comfortable, Jasmina teased. Though she wrapped her arm around his shoulder, we still have to clean up this mess. They returned to the Obsidian Bastion to find General Liam standing atop the walls, watching the sunset. The sky had turned a brilliant shade of orange and gold, reflecting off the obsidian pyramids. The Imperial Guard were cheering, their voices rising in a chorus of victory. Liam descended the stairs to meet his family. He looked at Nivtaris, then at his grandchildren. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He pulled them all into a crushing embrace, the metal of their armor clanking together. You did well, Liam whispered. The Kalor name will be remembered on this world for 1,000 years. We did it together, grandfather, Camtavius said, looking around at the city. VekTa Prime was ruined, yes. Half the planet was still a silver wasteland, and the scars of war would take generations to heal. But as the people emerged from their shelters, bringing out music, food, and bright fabrics to decorate the streets, the spirit of the city felt stronger than ever. The megatropolis began to breathe again. The spice markets reopened, the holographic banners were repaired, and the Great Pyramids once again became symbols of resilience rather than fortresses of desperation. Nivtaris stood with his family on the balcony of the Spire of Sol, looking out over their home. He thought about the cycle of war, the endless struggle of the Imperium, and the coldness of the void. But as he felt the warmth of the sunset and the presence of his kin, he knew that as long as they stood together, the darkness would never truly win. What now, Father? Nivtaris asked. General Liam looked at the broken moon and the restored city. Now we rebuild, and we make sure that the next time the Necrons wake up, they find a wall they cannot break. The Kalors stood in silence. 3 generations of warriors, watching the stars emerge in the purple sky. They were the shield of VekTa Prime, and their watch had only just begun. The adventure of reconstruction would be long, but for the first time in a century, they faced the future not with fear, but with the unwavering strength of a family united.